Hello, we're back with the Falcon project. We were working on a Roadrunner the last few days. Boy, that sure is a nice car. But we're getting ready to take the Falcon to Carlisle. And, I think we got her dependable. We're a new radiator. The brakes seem to be fine. It's very rare I don't have to do any brake work. I didn't do any brake work. Except the adjuster on one side rear, adjusting cable snapped, and the adjusting little bracket there slid down and was rattling around in there. Timing chain's good, new tires. So I think we're good. Gonna charge the AC today. We've got our manifold gauges hooked up. Both ports closed right now. These, when you turn this open, it opens this center line to this port. This one opens the manifold, they call it, to opens this line center again to this, which goes to either the low or the high side. So the red should be high. This is coming out of the compressor. This is high pressure gas, refrigerant, hopefully. And it goes to the condenser. The condenser then cools the high pressure gas to a high pressure liquid, takes it from a gas to a liquid, and then the small line, which has the sight glass where you look for bubbles if it's low in refrigerant, because you want this full of liquid refrigerant, to the evaporator. It then goes over to the firewall. First it goes through an expansion valve, which adjusts the size of the orifice of the incoming liquid refrigerant, which is a smaller one. This is the return. This adjusts the size of the orifice in the evaporator depending on how hot the cabin's inside. So the hotter it is, the bigger the orifice is, so that the efficiency of the evaporator is increased. Because you want the evaporator to have evaporation from the top to the very bottom. It's like a radiator, the evaporator. And as it evaporates, it cools that metal in that evaporator, the copper, and then the air blows through it, and that's how it cools the air. So the hotter it is inside, the bigger this orifice should be. And I'm talking a very small orifice. I think it's like the size of a hair, human hair. So this has why the system has to be very, very clean. Very, very careful when you hook up your lines. There's not a spot of dirt, and that's why you don't want any air in here, because once you get air in the system, you get moisture, and then you get rust, and rust will clog this. So then the return line comes back, a low pressure gas, after it's evaporated from a high pressure liquid to a low pressure gas to the evaporator, back to the compressor where it compresses it, beats it to a high pressure gas again, comes back to the front again, and cools it to a high pressure liquid, and then back again to the evaporator, and just does it over and over and over. So our goal here today is we want to add a little refrigerant oil. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. It's tricky. I usually don't like to do that, but I don't know, I just got a funny feeling this thing's low on refrigerant oil, even though, well, I don't know. I'm just going to add a little bit. This is Ford refrigerant oil, Motorcraft, with a C9 part number. And then interesting, this is a 69, it's a C9 part number. I don't know where I got it, but I just opened it up. Isn't that neat? C9. So, here's my vacuum pump. It's a Robinair. I bought it at a yard sale for I think $20. That's a good one. I was using a compressor from a refrigerator. You can use that. I just cut it out, the pump out of the refrigerator, and soldered the fittings on each end, this fitting right here, and I used it for years. It's still back there. It's goofy looking, but it works great. So here we go. We're going to start to pull the air out of this system. Hook on. And like I said, when you turn these things, you're just opening up each line to the center line, and that way you can control whether you want to pull vacuum or you want to pull refrigerant just by switching this center line. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up both sides. We're going to open up both sides to the center hose, which is on the vacuum pump, and you'll see the readings start to go down as it's creating a vacuum. And the gauge is also opened up to the system when you open up these nice little ferns. So I've opened this side up, so vacuum is coming up through this hose to my compressor, and I've opened these up, these Schrader valves, so I'm pulling vacuum from both the high and the low side, hopefully purging any air out of there and moisture. And some people, you know, before you charge, you have to do this. You have to pull out air. If it had a little bit of refrigerant in it and I was getting a reading when I hooked up, I got nothing on the gauges, then I would just add to it. If it had, like, you know, 30 pounds, I think the can standing is like 60 pounds, I think, at this kind of temperature. But I got nothing. So let's see what we got here. Oh boy, we're pulling good vacuum on both sides. Negative 30. And what we're going to do is, I'm going to add some oil. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pump it down here a little bit. As it pumps it out, any air will come out right here. Nothing's coming out at this point, of course, but it was there for a second. That's a good boy there. And what we're going to do is, we're going to shut it down. We're going to move the center line to this refrigerant oil, and then open up the system and suck it in there, because there's a vacuum in there right now. So, and then we'll pull it down again. So let's see, let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to shut down both sides. Now it's only pulling air from this hose right here, the center hose. I'm going to shut down my vacuum pump. I'm going to disconnect this line. Now there's a little bit of vacuum just in this hose right now. Did you hear a little psst? I'll take over to this. I think that's enough oil in there. I'm going to add a little more. I'm going to add just a little bit more. You don't want to put too much oil. It'll clog up the it'll accumulate in the coldest spot, which is what? What's the coldest spot of this system? The evaporator. It'll build up in there, and it'll hurt the efficiency. And you don't want your oil open. You don't want to get any air or moisture in that oil. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I believe that. So now I'm going to dunk this in here, the center hose. This is going to be kind of hard to do with just one hand. There you go. So we got it in there. Now I'm going to open up. Which side do I want to go in? The low or the high? Well, if I put it in the high, it's going to be on top of the piston. So we're going to put it in the, if I put it in the low, let's put it in the piston side. That piston might need lubrication. So let's see what I'm going to open it up. There, I opened it. Uh-oh. There she goes. She's sucking her in there. Didn't suck as much as I thought. Oh, did that thing get out in the air? Oh, we still got vacuum. See? I opened up that side. Let's close this side now. See if we can suck some in the other. It's going the wrong way. Let's open up the other side now. Opening up. There she goes. See it sucking it in there? Woo, look at that. Woo, cool. Still have a vacuum. Let's make sure it pulls it all the way in there. Still has a vacuum. That's interesting. I guess maybe that this hose is full of refrigerant. So let's lift it up in the air. Let's lift it up in the air. There she goes. Take your medicine. Listen. I think it's in there now. It's pulling air. Nice. Now, let's see if any oil's in that line. I think it's all in that system now. Well, look at that. Took it all. I hope I didn't overcharge it with refrigerant oil. Shoosh. AC work is tricky. Just take your time. Be careful when you hit the refrigerant, but it's pretty safe. As long as you don't do anything stupid. So let's pump it down again. And then we'll pump her down again. Open up to both sides. Oh boy. I wonder if any of that oil got in there. Yep, maybe. It shouldn't hurt it. We don't want to hydrolock it though, but I'm pretty sure there was no oil in that line. Now some people think that you should pump a system down for like an hour. I don't think so. You want to boil out all the moisture in it, which means that when the pressure goes down, it'll evaporate and then pull it out. And come out right here. She's pulling a good negative. So I don't think there's any holes in this system. And I noticed earlier I pulled it down just briefly and shut them down and nothing, the vacuum held. So this system's pretty tight. There's no leaks in it. Of course, it might be different when you put the 200, 250 psi coming out of this high pressure line, right? The high pressure, this is the return line low. This is the high right here. This will be about 200, 250 on depending on how hot the day is. Well, the hoses look pretty good. So we're just going to pump it down for a little while. I don't like to go crazy with the pumping down. I'm going to put it on pause, and I'll be right back. Well, we're back again. We're still pumping it down with our vacuum pump, Falcon AC. Pump sounds good. I got this refrigerant 12 at a flea market a couple weeks ago. 30-pounder. For $100. It wouldn't expel gas when you turn this open. And I didn't find out till I got home. I thought, well, that's why it was so cheap. But what I did was I sprayed WD-40 in there and started beating on it with a block of wood right here with it open, and it finally, the spring popped open. Apparently this isn't just a jam kind of a thing to cut off the gas. It's got there's a spring in there with a pad that goes down to stop the gas, and then when you turn up, it pops back open like that. I think they do that so if you try to charge it through this port, recharge it, that little valve will shut down. So you can't recharge these. They say on the side, don't recharge. I think that's why. But we're good. And I always wear eye protection when you do refrigerant. You just never know. You might have a gas explosion and freeze your eyes. That won't be good. You should probably wear gloves too, but I usually do wear some sort of gloves, but I don't know. I'm getting lazy, I guess. We're going to pump it down a few more minutes. I only do about 15 minutes. I don't do this hour stuff. I don't want to pump out all my oil I just put in there. So we'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back. I got my face shield on. It's been running for about 20 minutes. Pulling a vacuum on both sides, high and low. And what we're going to do now, this is the fun part. I'm going to shut down the high side. I'm going to shut down the low with the pump running. And turn off my vacuum pump. So right now, I've got vacuum on the high side and the low side, but it's isolated from the center right now. These are shut. You can see I'm still holding the vacuum inside. I want to make sure these are tight always. Now comes the fun part. I'm going to disconnect from the vacuum pump. There's a little vacuum in this line. You heard it bleed a little bit. And I'm going to hook into my refrigerant. Now I'm still isolated. This is the line going to my refrigerant. It's isolated from the two hoses here by these two. Oops. This is to the backing. This is to the refrigerant now, and this is isolated from these two turns that go to the compressor on the car. I'm going to open up my line. Now this line has access to the gas. Now this is where I never see anybody do what I'm going to do right now. I always bleed this line. There, did you hear that burp? That way I pulled any air that got in out of there. So now the tank is all the way up here. I like to do it a couple of times. Now I'm just going to open up to the gas in the tank. It's flowing in there now, filling that vacuum, doing the charging for me. Should come up to about 60, I think. Yep. That's the pressure in the tank there. I'm going to shut down now. I'm going to stay connected to my tank, and I'm going to start the car and start running the compressor. Make sure nothing's in the way. Turn the air conditioning on. Hello. Uh-oh. That was good. That's sweet. Or it was, why you want to wear a face shield. Something ain't right. That belt was loose. Look at that belt. I'm going to pause and tighten that belt up. Okay, belt's tight now. Doesn't sound too bad. So we're going to charge on which? The high side or the low side? The low side. The suction side, which we're turning back. That would be the yellow line. And you can see the pressure readings are much different. The low side is much lower. The high side is much higher. Typically it's 10 to 1. So if this is 30 suction side, you'll always have pressure on that suction side when there's refrigerant in there. This would be like 300. That's really not that accurate, but it's sort of just a rule of thumb. I'm going to open it up, the low side. We're charging now. The compressor doesn't sound too bad. I can hear refrigerant gas coming into the evaporator inside, which is a good sign. Boy, it's actually getting cold. Wow.